Hey everyone, Rue from the AfterShock Epicenter here. Before we get started with this week's happy hour, I just want to remind you that next weekend we are going to be at San Diego Comic-Con at booth 2715, and we have these awesome t-shirts available on Shopify. If you buy them and have it in time for the show or show us proof of purchase when you come to the booth, you get 10% off your entire purchase. So looking forward to seeing you there. Let's get started with the show. Hey, Rue again here to remind you we had some awesome titles that came out yesterday for New Comic Book Day. So if you didn't get to your local comic book shop, make sure you get there as soon as possible to pick up Dogs of London #3 and The Heathens, Hunters of the Damned trade paperback complete series. And now it's time for us to talk to Elliot Kalan himself. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AfterShock Happy Hour and Live Sale. I'm your host and the communications specialist here at AfterShock Comics, RuthAnn Thompson. Well, if you can't tell from my big smile, I am so excited to speak to our special guest today. He is a comedian, a writer, producer. You might know him from so many TV shows, including Daily Show, Mystery Science 3000, so much more. And he is also the creator of the Maniac of New York series here with us at AfterShock Comics, none other than Elliot Kalan. Hello, good sir. How are you?
Hello. I'm all right. I should warn everybody. I came down with COVID yesterday, so it seems to be a pretty mild case. But everyone watching should probably wear a mask,
Yes,
just in case. I don't know the new variants. I think they can travel over the internet.
it's true.
But otherwise, things are good. I'm very excited to be talking about Maniac of New York and whatever people whatever anybody wants to know about. I'll answer any question about my work, about the Civil War, about
Ooh, okay.
I'm trying to think what else I know anything about. That's about it. So
That's those two things, nothing else.
that's
Okay, we got
really the
this.
two things. Yeah.
Well, what we always like to ask our creatives, and you have such a wide breadth of your entire career of doing everything from movies, TV shows, writing, producing, being a comedian, and now a comic book writer. So, what was the first thing that you remember as a kid, like whether it was a comic book, movie, or TV show that you're watching, and you're just like, you know what? I want to do this. I think I can do it.
That's a really good question. Um, it was so far back, I'm not really sure that I remember because I was always when I was a kid, I already knew I wanted to write stories. There's probably some book that I read when I was a little kid or had read to me that was uh, that made me think like, oh, I really like stories because I remember when I was about 5 or 6, I guess, writing a story about a boy and a dinosaur, and my parents like photocopying it and handing it out to everybody at Rosh Hashanah or whatever, or some holiday that we had dinner with our relatives, and um, it was just always something that, as far back as I can remember, that I wanted to write, that I wanted to be a writer, and I guess when it came to comedy, I grew up in like the golden age of stand-up comedy on television, where it was the late '80s, early '90s. Every television channel seemed to have its stand-up show, and I just watched stand-up comedy all the time. And I remember whenever you read interviews with comedians, they're always like, "I didn't even know that was a thing you could do." But when I was a kid, I was like, "This is a thing that people do. Like this is a job people have. Like I could try this." But I don't. I wonder. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna just make up an answer, and I'm gonna
I like it.
say, yeah, and I'm gonna say The Dark Crystal, the Jim
Oh,
Henson movie. That it's such a gorgeous movie, and I remember seeing it for the first time and being like, oh, finally a movie where it's all monsters and there's no people in it, and it's
like,
just
thank
monsters and
God.
creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get
finally.
these
Like when I
humans
was
out of here.
I was such a when I was a kid, I collected a lot of the He-Man Masters of the Universe figures, but I didn't want any of the people figures. I wanted the monster figures. I was like, where's the cartoon for me where the monsters are the good guys? And uh, I think maybe Dark Crystal was it, where it was like, oh, it's possible to do something that is like what my fantasy version of what a movie would be, where it's all monsters and you just have a scene where it's lizard creatures eating really loudly for like 2 straight minutes, I think, in the grossest way. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that scene so much.
I actually, I haven't watched the new show yet. I'm terribly behind on things, but I've I don't know, that movie is just so perfect though. Something about the Dark Crystal. I just will always love that movie.
Yeah, it's something that I last saw it a couple years ago. We showed it to my older son because he had never seen it before, and there's just something about it that like goes straight to the center of my brain on like a mythic level. And I don't know, but mostly it's that it's all monsters. It's all monsters and creatures, and like even the two like kind of human-y characters are not that human, you know. In I live in Los Angeles, and here they just recently opened this Academy Movie Museum from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and they have a room of just kind of science fiction props, and they have some of the like the eating utensils from that scene in Dark Crystal, where it's like the silverware that goes on the ends of the monster's fingers. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting to see this. So yeah, so that's what I'm gonna say. That's my partly made up, partly true answer to that question.
I like it. Well, partly made up, partly true. How did you go from loving the Dark Crystal and movies and TV shows that were only based on monsters? And then how did your career go from there?
um, well, part of it was growing up and realizing human beings are sometimes as interesting as monsters. Um, but I always knew I wanted to work in, like I said, kind of writing, like television and movies. Around 13 years old, I just really got into movies, and I really loved them and the way that you could tell stories in them. And I went to NYU for as a screenwriting major for college, and lucked out that and while I was at NYU, I started working. Not working. I started performing slightly as a sketch duo with a good friend of mine, Brock Mahan, who's still one of my best friends, and we were writing partners and sketch performing partners for a long time, as a duo called the Hypocrites. And uh, my last semester at NYU, I interned at the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, which was one of my favorite shows, and uh, got a reputation there as the guy where if you sent him on a run, like to go, if you sent him on a run to leave the building and go get a prop or something like that, or that I would actually run when I was doing it, because I would get so bored just walking around that I'd be like, let me finish this fast so they can give me something else to do. Because that made a big impression on them, and they hired me as a production assistant, and I knew I wanted to be in comedy. And so it was a great place to be. And I kind of rose up through the ranks of that show, where going to being from a production assistant to a segment producer, and then applying for a writing job and becoming a writer, and then being asked to be the head writer for the last kind of year and a half that Jon Stewart was the host. And things took off from there. It was like I went to college, and then I had like a 13-year postgraduate degree process in television, you know. And during that time, and that opened up a lot of doors for me. And I was able to get into comic books because I became friendly with Wyatt Cenac, who at the time was a Daily Show correspondent, and he was going to be a guest on this show called Comic Book Club, that is a live show in New York at the time I think it was at the Pit Theater, the People's Improv Theater, but I'm not sure if it still is or if I'm remembering it wrong. And he was like, "Why don't you come do this with me?" Because he's a guy who does not like to be interviewed. So he was like, "Why don't you come do it with me?" And during that, they said, "If you could write a comic book story, what would it be about?" And I said, "I always wondered about the Inuits that found Captain America frozen in ice, and then Submariner showed up, and they worshipped him as a god, and Submariner showed up and threw it back in the ice. What happened to them? Like, what happens when you're worshiping this frozen superhero, and then a fish man comes along and throws him away, and you don't have him anymore?" And a guy named Tom Brennan, who at the time was an editor at Marvel and has since gone on to work in the mayor's office in New York City, he was like, "We have an anthology book coming up where we could tell that story," and so I wrote it for them, and that kind of opened the door for it. Was so being at the Daily Show and being asked by Wyatt to come along with him on this thing opened the door to working in comics that way, which is another thing that I had always wanted to do. You know, I'd been a regular comic book reader since I was 9 or 10 years old, and which is very sad because it means I've been reading comic books regularly for like 30 years,
I don't know
I
anything
guess
about
that's it.
that. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, yeah,
What?
exactly, yeah. But like that, but I realized at a certain point that this is a huge tangent, and then I'll stop talking so you can ask another question. That there's two figures that kind of are most important to me as moral guidelines, like kind of my pole stars that I try to navigate by when it comes to my personal ethics. And that's Abraham Lincoln and Spider-Man. And I realized like, well, Abraham Lincoln's a real person and Spider-Man is a fictional character, but Abraham Lincoln died 100 and 16 years before I was born. I'll never meet him. I'll never know him. I'll never see him in person. Spider-Man, like, I feel like I've been alongside him on his adventures, and I've written Spider-Man books. I've worked with him. So in a weird way, Spider-Man is more of a real person to me than Abraham Lincoln is, in terms of my interaction with them. So uh, anyway, that's a long way of saying that I've it's not a bad thing to read comics for all that time, because uh, it's a it's made them real to me in a way that is probably partly unhealthy, but also partly very healthy.
Now I need a Spider Lincoln comic book. Just putting it out there.
Oh,
We need
I would wish. I wish it would be my dream come true. They're both so different yet so similar in so many
Yeah.
ways.
I absolutely love like the story of how just like one step at a time, you're just saying like this magical moment just happened and that opened the doors to that. So for anybody who's kind of looking to follow in your footsteps, other than running very fast and talking about comic books whenever possible, what suggestions would you have for them for kind of coming into this industry?
I think the biggest suggestion is, I mean, the first thing I'll say is it happens differently for everybody. The weird thing about entertainment, the whole entertainment industry, is that there's no set path for doing anything. I remember when I was at NYU, there was a class where they would bring in professionals to talk to us, and once it was just all professional television writers. They're each telling their story about how they became professionals and got their first break, and every single story was completely different. There was no nobody had any set. One guy pretended to be a pizza delivery guy and delivered a script that he had written, and one person like self-produced an off-Broadway play and an agent came to see it, and one person. And so kind of be open to opportunities anywhere, because there's no set way to do it. There's no like, I used to tell people all the time, no one's going door to door knocking on doors saying like, we're hiring comedy writers or television writers. Is there anyone at this house who would like to be that? No? Okay, we'll go to the next house. Like you need to be looking for opportunities and putting yourself out there. But also the other big thing is, don't wait for someone to give you permission to create something. Like, go take advantage of whatever time you have, whatever energy you have, whatever inspiration you have, and do it now in whatever way you can do it. Obviously, if it's like, well, I've got a great idea for the next Mission Impossible movie, I guess I'll just write that. Like, that's maybe not the best way, because that's a movie series that someone owns and Tom Cruise has to be in it and all that. But if you have an idea for a story um, or a comic or a short film or anything, you should just do your best to make it. And it's never been easier to put something out into the universe and have people see it or find it. In the year I first started coming up in comedy, right before internet video was a real thing. Like, I remember being at the Daily Show and everyone being like, "You heard about MySpace? We all have to have MySpace pages now. Like, MySpace, it's this big new thing." And like starting a music MySpace page for my comedy duo, because that was the only way you could do like a professional MySpace page. But I feel like if I had gotten into it a couple years later, that instead of my sketch partner Brock and I doing what we did, which was renting out theater spaces and inviting everyone we knew to come see us perform, and then making a little bit of money, and then knowing we couldn't do it for another few months at least because it was going to be the same audience every time. Like, we could have started making comedy videos and putting them out online, and maybe no one will see it, maybe somebody will see it. But the worst thing that happens is you create something and you put it out there and nothing happens, in which case you've lost nothing. There's no one's going to be like, or if you sent an unsolicited script to a comic book publisher, they're not going to be like, they're probably just going to throw it away, but they're not going to be like, put this person on the never hire ever list. This is the temerity of it. You might as well.
How dare! It's blacklisted.
Yeah,
Done.
like,
Yeah.
how dare they show enthusiasm for the
Oh.
art form that we work in. As long as you are kind of polite and professional in the things that you do, then to not be afraid to create, to put yourself out there, to ask questions of the places or the people that you'd want to work for or work with or any of that. And as long as you're treating people respectfully, then they will most likely want to help you, or worst case scenario, just throw the letter away or throw the submission away. And the next time you submit to them, they will not have remembered you, and you'll have a fresh start right from the beginning. As opposed to, when I was working at the Daily Show, there was someone who wanted to be hired as an intern, and he mailed a brick with his resume tied to it to a bunch of the producers there. And and in the letter, it was like, my professor said, do something to get noticed, no matter what it is. And we were like, that's a bad lesson. We're never
that
hiring
wasn't
this person.
mm-mm.
That's bad.
That
But like so much of being a creative person is dealing with rejection. And because you create 10 things, and if you're lucky, one of them becomes a real thing, something that people get to enjoy. But you have to keep doing it, because you never know which thing is going to be the thing that becomes real. And the rejection is almost worth it when something becomes real, and people that you never knew, that you never otherwise you would never meet, and who wouldn't know you existed, suddenly they're enjoying something that came from your mind, and you're communicating with them in that way across this whatever distance or whatever time, and you're connecting with people that otherwise you would have remained separate. And I do a podcast called The Flophouse that's ostensibly about bad movies, but really it's me and my two friends, Dan and Stuart, kind of goofing around. And people get in touch with us all the time to tell us either that they're mad at something we said, or that they enjoyed the show. And either way, it's like, oh, well, we've connected with somebody that otherwise we wouldn't have even known they existed. They wouldn't have known we existed. And there's something really special and kind of magical about that, about knowing that it is that it bridging that distance and bridging that gap just through your creative work. And that's really exciting, and it's worth sending out submissions and ideas and having either nobody want to make them, or they get made and nobody likes them, or any of those types of things. It's worth it if you can get it, but there's no guarantees, audience. Well, that was a lot of talking from me. I apologize.
No, that was so wonderful. What a wonderful, positive like advice for everybody out there. So yes, please take it to heart. Be positive. Be polite and have proper etiquette, and also just don't give up. Just keep it going. Like, and don't send bricks. Like that's another thing.
Don't send bricks.
Don't send bricks. That's a
It
terrible
always
idea.
feels it always feels threatening, unless you know someone who is building a house and is running low on bricks.
Right? Bricks in this economy? Are you kidding?
Exactly. I don't have a kiln. I can't make my own. Then they would appreciate it. But otherwise, if you're working in an office and a brick arrives in the mail, it's not. Your first response is fear.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's, as it should be. That is the correct way. And speaking of fear, so now we'll just segue into Maniac of New York, and we have all of our lovely followers here, including Andrea Muti, the artist, is actually in the chat. Hello, Andrea. And then
Andrea, I'm such a big fan of Andrea's, and every time that we interact on email, because unfortunately we haven't got to meet in person yet, even after we've worked together for a couple of years on this now. Every time he's always like, there's just the sheer enthusiasm that comes through the emails is so amazing. And the fact that I can write something very disgustingly gory, and he's like, ha ha ha, like he just with this kind of like, this like pirate gusto. Like it's really, it's so exciting. So
I can confirm, like after meeting him in person several times, that he is 10 times as positive and enthusiastic in person. It's like amazing, especially like when you look at his artwork, that somehow he's making watercolors into this gory, terrifying thing, and you meet him and he's like, hello, like he's just so lovely.
But he does it in the work so that he doesn't have to do it in real life. That's the secret, I feel like, is my mom, whenever I write a horror thing, she's like, oh, my son, like, what does it mean that these things are in your head? And I'm like, well, it's better that I'm putting it on paper than that they're, doing anything else with them. That's the safest. I always say to her, I'm always like, Stephen King seems like a very nice man. He hasn't murdered anybody.
Yes, he seems very gentle. So, yeah, no
Yes.
murders so far. We'll see. So for Maniac Harry, you've been pretty open about the fact of, especially the first volume, of kind of your inspirations behind that. Do you want to tell the folks here just a little bit more in depth about that? Because like there was a movie that it was kind of based on that we were all a little disappointed in.
A little bit. There's a movie I'm sure our viewers right now are familiar with, called Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. And I grew up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City. My grandmother still lives in New York City. And so I spent a lot of my youth going in and out of that city. And I love New York. And I lived there for about 17 years, starting when I was in college and then until I moved to LA. And it's just a really magical city. And I grew up being like, oh, well, New York, that's where you go when you're a grown up. Like that's where you go and you live there. And loving like any movie version of New York, like like the Muppets Take Manhattan or something like that, or like the Ghostbusters movies, or like when I remember when Gremlins 2 came out, seeing the poster, and I have such a strong memory of seeing the poster for the first time, being like, they're making another Gremlins movie, and then finding out it was going to be set in New York, and being like, and they're going to be in New York, and like, so knowing that there was going to be that Jason was going to be in New York, Jason was going to take Manhattan, was a very exciting idea, but it wasn't until years later when I was older that I actually got to see the movie. And I think like every single person probably who's ever seen the movie was very disappointed that there's not a lot of taking Manhattan. There's a like he kicks a boombox in Times Square, and otherwise he's like on a Vancouver subway train, and he's like in a bar at one point, I think, and like there's a lot of sewer stuff. It's very disappointing. And so for many, many years, kind of in my head, it was like, since I was a teenager, basically, it was like, well, what's the better version of this? Like, what's my version of this that I feel like takes advantage of what an amazing city New York is, but also how densely packed it is. Like one of the reasons I had to leave New York was because it started feeling like I was living in a termite hive, and people are just kind of crawling all over each other all the time. And what does it mean? And so what does that mean when a killer is loose? But also there's two other inspirational things. One is there's nothing scarier to me than, I think I talked a little bit about this in the introduction to the first trade, might be in the introduction to the second trade, which is coming out soon. But
Yay.
where there's nothing scarier to me than something that is inevitable, where like you're in the room with the killer's gonna kill you, you can't outsmart him, like there's nothing you can do. Like there's no, and that moment where you realize there's nothing you can do. And the idea of a someone who is on the loose, who is unstoppable. Like there's no way to stop her, and so you're just at the mercy of knowing that this thing is wandering around. And when I was in New York, I would be on the above ground subway in Queens, and at night, and I would look down at the ground and see people walking around the sidewalk, and I'd be like, what would it feel like if I saw like a monster walking around right there? And it couldn't hurt me because I'm in this train. I'm only going to see it for a couple seconds before we're far away from each other, but I know it's somewhere out in the city, and at some point, and I know it's out there and it could possibly get me. And that feeling of fear, knowing there's something out there that could get you at any moment, and there's nothing you can do about it. Kind of that kind of It Follows kind of feeling in a way. Um, but and so those were the two main things. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to write this story where it's like a monster going around, an unsolved monster going around killing people in New York, I have to have like a reason to do it, or else it's just gore for no reason. And I started thinking about kind of the way we handle gun violence in the United States, which is to say like, yeah, that's too bad. It's really scary. I guess we've got to make I guess we've got to make buildings more like fortresses, or teach
Yep.
people first aid, because there's no
Thoughts
other way
and
to deal with it.
prayers.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. That thoughts and prayers, where it's like, I could change my life a little bit I could sacrifice a little bit to make you safer, but instead I'd rather you change your life or die so that I don't have to do anything. And that feeling kind of informed it a lot, how something that is objectively horrible, and there's been so many of these throughout human history. I feel like the nuclear arms race was the big one when I was a little kid. Like there's so many of these where something that is objectively terrifying, people are just like, oh, it would be so hard to do anything about this, so I guess we're just gonna have to live with it. And then
Yeah.
and then while the book was coming out, COVID hit, and it was like an even more heightened version of that. And so those are the three inspirations: was my disappointment in how little Jason took Manhattan, and that feeling of fear when something inevitable is out there, and if it gets to you, there's nothing you can do about it. So you're just kind of worried about it all the time. But then also that third feeling of like, you can't live in a state of fear forever. So the thing that is terrifying becomes something that you just kind of live with after a while. And you just hope that your number doesn't come up. And it's just too difficult to do anything to make it never happen. So those are the three main things, which is a very sobering answer for a comic book about a killer in a mask who's named Harry.
Well, that's the thing, is this kind of inspiration of this type of title and why it's been doing so well is because it's obviously like deep rooted in a lot of stuff. It's not just a hack and slash. It's got a lot going on. So it's not too sober of a answer whatsoever.
I
And
hope so.
then,
That I mean, that's the best in my opinion. The best horror stuff is the stuff where like, even if it's only about something in the most general sense, it's about something. And it like, even if it's that like, I'm not too big into like torture horror stuff, because it's like, well, I don't really know what that's about. I don't understand.
Yeah.
But something like Night of the Living Dead, or like H.P. Lovecraft type horror, or even or like Get Out recently, or I'm trying to think of ones where like even something like Night of the Living Dead, like people are like, it's about this. No, it's about this. No, it's about this. It's not, it's hard to tell exactly what it's about, but you get the feeling from it that it's about something. And so even just having that inkling that it's about something is gives my brain, gives my conscience enough of a like get off the hook, get out of jail free card. From like, now I can enjoy it. Now I can enjoy these people getting their bodies ripped apart because I can feel like it's about something. You
There's
know?
meaning. There's a reason. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
Even if you said to me, "What's Alien about?" I'd be like, well, I mean, like, I guess you could, like, if I thought long enough, it'd be like, I guess it's about the way workers are sacrificed by their employers, or treated as cannon fodder by the. But really, what I'm enjoying about it is that it's really scary to be trapped on a spaceship with an alien. But because there's that little bit of something else in it, I can be like, okay, good. It's. I don't have to feel guilty about enjoying this.
Yeah, exactly. That there's something to be gained from it. It's not just entertainment. So you can just lean back and like actually be entertained.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm catching up with some of these comments here. We have a lot of people who are also big fans of Andrea and can also confirm that he is a ray of sunshine in person, says Nathan Duncan on Facebook. It's true. It's really true.
Mhm.
And yeah, let's see. We have one question from JD Smith that says, question for Elliot, Maniac or Maniac Cop? I'm
Oh,
not
from the
sure.
movies, Maniac or
Yeah.
Maniac? So there's the movie Maniac and the movie Maniac Cop. I
Hmm.
guess. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Maniac. Oh, well, then I would say I would. That's a good question. Oh,
you're
wow.
like, ooh, all right. Now that I
You
know what
know,
the question is.
Maniac Cop is. I'm trying to remember how supernatural Maniac Cop is. It's been so long since I since I've seen it. Um, but you know what? I'm gonna say Maniac, because Maniac Cop, even in the most basic recesses of his mind, there's probably still some feeling of responsibility. Whereas Maniac for Maniac, he's just a maniac. So that's, yeah. So that's what I'm gonna say. But feel free to contact me on Twitter if I'm wrong, or if I'm remembering Maniac Cop wrong.
I mean, oh,
Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh,
okay,
sorry.
that's amazing. So the producer Stefan was just giving his take on it, and so we were all both just looking crazy for a second, and just nodding off into the distance for no reason. Sorry. But he was mentioning the Maniac Cop 2, where the Maniac Cop actually does team up with a supernatural serial killer. So I guess we're changing our
Mm,
answer. We're going with that one, I
yeah,
guess,
I'm changing
next.
it. This is going to lose me a lot of points with fans. I don't know if I've ever actually seen Maniac Cop 2. I think I might have only seen the first one. But I'll put it on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, the producer says they're okay with that.
Okay. Whew, all right. If Stefan's okay with it, that's fun. We can keep going. That was got a little scary
That
there.
was, yeah,
It
that was
was
a nail
intense.
biter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned before, you haven't had the glory of meeting Andrea in person, but when you were teamed up with Andrea at first and like seeing his art style and all that kind of stuff, like what was your first thoughts? What has it been like seeing this story come to life in this terrifying watercolor way?
I mean, I really love it. I think that he has such a great way of creating an atmosphere, and the things he does with color to create kind of like an atmosphere and a feeling, combined with how much I love his facial acting. Like the way he has a way with facial expressions that feels real to me without feeling photorealistic. And the we had actually, it's really funny because so my editor on the book, Mike Martz, he had suggested Andrea, and I was like, wait a minute. We worked together once before. That we had actually worked. I had written a story for an American vampire anthology book for years ago for DC, and he had done the art, but I think it had no interaction during it. It was all through the editor on that book, and so we actually hadn't done it. We actually hadn't met, and but once his art was on, and once I got to, we the first thing I think we did was like worked through the design of what the maniac would look like, and just all the different Andrea's like, I'm gonna give you masks. I'm gonna give you a bunch of different designs for masks. Take a look at this. And suddenly there's like 12 masks and they all look amazing. And I'm going to give you a bunch of different designs for outfits. Here are different designs for outfits, and there's like 8 of them, and they all look great. And it's like, what about this jacket with those pants, and these boots, and just every time I get so excited knowing that pages are going to be coming in from him on each of these 2 series, and like it was just when I would see an email from him, I'm like, this is gonna be great. Like, I can't wait to see this. And then seeing the pencils and knowing that they're gonna look even more amazing once he does his coloring on it and finishes them up. And I don't know, I feel like there have been a number of times working on this book with Andrea where he'll send pages and I'm like, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, how did you like my description was not that detailed. Like, you took it right out of my head. And there was a there was some in this second volume. That's the collection comes out soon. There, the
August 3rd, if you want to
there's
plug that.
oh, August 3rd. Oh, on my younger son's birthday. Oh, that's
Oh,
sweet. Oh, that's he's my younger son. So actually, I'll talk about Andre in a minute. But then my younger son, he's gonna be my horror boy when he grows up, and he's very into monsters and spooky things. He loves skulls and ghosts and stuff like that. He's gonna turn 4 on August 3rd, and he's all about monsters and ghosts, and he loves the Creature from the Black Lagoon and things like that, and Dracula. He's always like, tell me the story of Dracula, tell me the story of Frankenstein. And he'll say to me, he goes, Daddy, when we're teenagers, we're gonna stay up all night watching scary movies. And it's so sweet because he thinks I'm gonna be a teenager when he's a teenager, but it's just very sweet. And he goes, he only knows the horror movies that I've mentioned. So he's like, we're gonna watch all the scary movies like Dracula and In the Mouth of Madness and The Thing. Like, he only knows the ones that he's heard me talk about. So it's his birthday. That's very sweet. Oh, that's good for my horror boy. But there's a time when Andrea, there's a scene. A lot of volume 2 takes place at a school, and I sent Andrea I'm always worried I'm mispronouncing his name. The like a photo reference for a school, and he was like, "Well, this is what I drew already," and it was the same thing. Like, it was the same, like, it was the same picture. And but and I was like, "This is crazy!" Like like that was how simpatico we were. And so the one of the exciting things about working on this book has just been so on the same page we've been the whole time, and seeing him bringing to life this stuff that when I write it, it's all like comic books are all in the pictures. Like, the writing is exciting, the writing is necessary, but it's the pictures are what brings it to life. And so seeing this stuff come to life has been just super exciting. And to write like this person, like Harry's in Yankee Stadium and he's just like cutting his way through all these fans, and then to see him send me the pages and then to look at it in the printed book and be like, oh, it's so gross, like it's like it's so scary. But it's just working with him is just a delightful thing. So
yeah. And I just, yeah, again, like, it's all done, but it's all done. It's all terrifying. It's all in watercolor. I still like am
yeah,
bamboozled by that. It's amazing. So there's
you
a
don't
couple
think of
little,
you
oh,
don't
go
think of
ahead.
watercolor as a scary medium, but he
Yeah,
can do
you
it.
don't, but he does, and I've actually had the honor of seeing him do it. I mean, he's destroyed a few of our AfterShock tablecloths at cons by doing his artwork. Like, right there, there's like this red paint. Every once in a while, I'll like pull out a tablecloth and like, red paint. Ah, Andrea was here. Noted. So I don't know if you know this. He does another title with us called Bunny Mask, and he
hmm
actually sneaks in Maniac Harry masks into Bunny Mask, and he sneaks Bunny Mask into like a few little panels here and there, and Maniac Harry, and it's always very fun. And there's one other thing he told me, and maybe he can confirm if he's still in the comments, but he actually draws a page at a time. Like, he won't read forward to like what's
Hmm.
going to happen next. So like he just like has the scene that he's supposed to draw and does that before he even reads the next thing. And I was like, oh wow, that must help like build that tension, because both of the comic books he works with us on are horror stuff, and there's
Yeah,
so much tension, and you can kind of feel it in his artwork. And it's like, oh, because he doesn't even know what's going to happen next, so he can't even like accidentally foreshadow like something being okay. Like,
that's
for
amazing.
me, there's like this terrifying scene like that in a second volume, and we should definitely talk more in detail about like the inspirations and kind of the stuff for the second volume, because it is very, it's not very different, because obviously we still have our same Maniac Harry and our same characters trying to stop him, but there is just a very different flavor to it. But there's this scene where the little girl is trying to get, who survived the death train from the first volume, is trying to get to the detective to be able to tell him, like, I think, you know, I have this solution, like there's this one thing that he seems
Mm-hmm.
to be weak against. And there's that creeper guy who tries to like kind of, you know, you can tell there's not great intent there, we'll put it
Oh
lightly.
yeah,
And like,
that's a polite way to put it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And you're hoping Maniac Harry shows up. You're like, come on, Harry, like, come on, murder this guy horribly. And like, it's just, and it's so well done. So thank you for writing that scene. And of course, like Andrea's like artwork, it just, oh, it's so intense. And I hate it. It gives me goosebumps every time.
yeah. Oh, I mean, like there's a lot of scary people out in the world, and like not just Maniac Harry, and that the that whole sequence with Lena, the little girl. It's like uh there's a I don't know. I wanted to, like, that character. I wanted to make things scary for her and show her like really being challenged to and having to overcome challenges without being, you know, again, without it being torturous. You know, there's something that I feel like I've really come to love the human characters, let's call them, in the book, Gina and Zelda and Lena, and but I but at the same time, that means that as those series went on, I kind of didn't want bad things to happen to them. And the thing that as a writer you have to do is you have to like make bad things happen to the characters, or else there's no story there. Um, and yeah, that makes I didn't know that about the way he does the book, but that makes a lot of sense because you're right. There's like tension in all the pages. Like there's he manages to get so much tension and suspense because uh, yeah, he doesn't know what's going to happen next. Makes me
Mm-hmm.
realize I should probably mention things. I should be clear about mentioning things in early pages that need to be set up for later pages. But he's good about that. There's that. I've never had a problem with that. So the you asked about the different feel between the two volumes, and the first one is very much in the as much as I was talking about Jason Takes Manhattan earlier. The movie that's an even bigger influence on it for me is my favorite movie of all time, which is the original Taking of Pelham 123 with Walter Matthau and Robert Shaw. And I just love that movie so much. And it's such a tense movie, and it's such a funny movie. And it's so like it's such a New York movie where every character in it, and most of the characters in it don't even have names, but every character in it feels really alive and is always kind of like kind of kibitzing on everything else that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I watch that movie, I've seen it, I don't know, like 20 times, 20 some odd times. Every time I watched it on my birthday last year, my wife was like, "So do you want to?" We had my friends over, and my wife was like, "Do you want to watch a movie?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was like, I want to show Taken Pelham 123, but we did watch that last year on my birthday. And she was like, "We can watch it again if you want." I was like, "Yeah." And most of my friends fell asleep because they'd seen it before. But I was like, they're not going to get the money to the hijackers on time. They're never going to be able to do it, even though I've seen the movie. I know how it ends. But that movie is very much tension on a train in a in a very confined space. And so I wanted to keep that first volume as much on that train as possible, because that's something I used to horror fantasize about when I lived in New York. Was I'm on a subway train. If there's a monster or a murderer on this train just killing his way down the train, there's nothing I can do. I can't leave. You know, I'm trapped here. But with the second one, it was partly wanting to find kind of new satirical goals, kind of new things to talk about, and also wanting to now contrast like a very confined space with a very open space, and how the two can still be both very scary. So Harry kind of he's a wanderer, you know, he just kind of wanders into places. He wanders into a school, and it was about being trapped in ever more confined spaces. So first it's being you're trapped in a school with this thing. Then you're trapped in a room and it's trying to get in. And then eventually, spoiler alert, one of the characters, Raphael, is trapped in a locker, and Harry is trying to stab him through the locker. And it's just about being in ever more confined spaces, and then him going off and, again, spoiler alert, ending up at Yankee Stadium, which is huge. You know, it's an open air stadium, but how it should feel much safer. It should feel less scary. But there's something about being in this huge crowd of people that is still, and realizing it's still a confined space, even though it's a large one, that is scary in its own way. So it was almost like in the first one, it's almost all been taking place in this one confined space. In the second one, how can I make it even smaller? How can I trap people into ever smaller spaces with Harry, and then open it up suddenly to a very big space that's still really scary because you're still stuck around all these people. Even you're in this big open space, but there's people around you. You can't get away. And also just a long time ago, making a list of like crazy places for Harry to show up, and like Yankee Stadium was a was a big one because I just never seen it before. With slasher movies, they usually weren't made on the biggest budgets, and so you'd have a lot of the killing would take place at like an isolated summer camp, or a rundown house, or some place that it was very easy to shoot in, out a rural cabin,
Yeah.
and so wanting to see it in a situation I'd never seen in a movie, which is a slasher on the loose in a major league ballpark, and I grew up. My brother is a big sports fan, and my older son is a big sports fan. So, and I do not really care that much about sports. So this was, in a way, it's like, well, how do I get their interests involved in my interests? I know I'll have the monster loose at a baseball stadium. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
I like it. We had a comment from Nathan Duncan who said part 3 is in the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, what an amazing idea! I mean, that's yeah. You know what? I'm gonna have to file it away for someday in the future.
Like,
I hope if there's more.
noted.
That's such a it gets even, but then you have Harry is like just climbing stairs for a long time, because I don't know if he's ever been in the Statue of Liberty, but I've been there. It's all stairs, and
It's
then
so much, so many stairs.
once you get to the crown and you finally get to look out of it, the people behind you are like, "Move! We're on stairs too. Come on,
Yeah.
let's go."
Let's
But
keep it moving. Yeah.
oh, what a great idea! If he's on Liberty Island, it's like Maniac Island. Yeah.
Yeah, ooh,
Okay.
ooh, I love it. Well, and the other thing, like you kind of mentioned about having it in this open air place of the Yankee Stadium that should feel safer. Also, it's daytime. Like I remember one of the
Yeah.
first horror
Yeah.
movies to show like horror stuff happening like during the day. I was like, I'm not safe anywhere or anytime.
Yeah,
Like, no.
exactly. And again, the slash movies tend to be low budget, and so part of it is like using the shadows to hide the things that
Mm,
you don't have the budget to show. And with monster movies too, and night is scary because you can't see everything, but it's about how much scarier it is, to me at least, to be in the daytime and to see the thing that's after you and to know you can't get away from it, and how like you can die in the daytime too. Like it's not like in the daytime it's not dangerous,
yeah, the knives are
like
just as sharp in the daytime.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. So that yeah, there's something about yeah, daytime horror that is its own kind of scariness and terrifyingness.
yeah, and so we do have the second volume is going to be on shelves on August 3rd. So happy that it lands on your son's birthday. That's so wonderful.
Oh, I should give
But
him a copy, but he's not. He really shouldn't be.
yeah.
I'll read him some other stuff. I'll keep reading him the Wizard of Oz books. That's what he's into right now, other than the story of Dracula and Frankenstein and so forth.
Yes, of course. So sweet, so cute. But since is there any kind of hints of like maybe where Maniac Harry is up to next? Do we think there's anything on the horizon for him to be continuing his slashing?
I definitely got ideas on it. Should there be more, and I always hope that there is. There are. I mean, part of the thing is that the secret behind Maniac Harry rampages is that they're almost all at places that I know pretty well. The Bronx schools is one that I don't know as well, and I had to do research for that. But like otherwise, he's going to be when he's on the subway. Like I spent many years riding the subway, and I've been to Yankee Stadium many times. So it's like, what are the places I that I know and love well in New York, so that I can take him there. And uh and there's a lot of them. Like I haven't yet done anything with the museums of New York. There was that hint about the Museum of Natural History, and that,
Yeah.
that there's that thing in that museum that is connected to Harry, and I'd love to be able to tie up that loose end, um that whole, that whole area I'd love to do something with Harry in that kind of um like Central Park axis between the Museum of Natural History and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which are two of my favorite places in New York. And um if it's a favorite place of mine in New York, then there's nothing I'd like to do more than have Harry kill people there. So hopefully we'll get to see Harry finally indulge in some high culture. Shouldn't I get the
Yes.
chance for more Harry stories?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I have to read this message that Stefan, our producer, just sent me because it's too funny. That's what got me laughing. He said, when Maniac Harry met Sally, Empire State Building story.
Oh, that's another good one. There's so many. That's part of the part of the. I mean, it's the reason that New York is the best city for movies and the best city for stories, and so many people live there. And it's like there's so many things in it that are exciting and iconic, and it's a very special. And there's many great cities. I used to bore my wife talking about what makes a city a great city, like what makes it a great city. And I'd say there's two, maybe three great cities in the United States. And I would say that New York and San Francisco were like great cities, and maybe Chicago and Los Angeles. I don't know. And she'd be like, well, what does that mean, a great city? And I'm like, I can't quite explain it. But like Paris is a great city and London is a great city. And like Budapest is a great city. But like New York there's so much about it that is, that's like special, and there's so many things where even if you've never been there, it's been so culturally dominant, in American culture at least, that you see the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, and it. And it's like, you don't need to do like the idea that if you had like a Maniac of New York cover and you just had the Statue of Liberty, this is what actually, maybe this is what I'll commission Andrea to do for me, is the Statue of Liberty wearing Harry's mask with the machete in his hand. Like like when you do that and you're like instantly like, I understand the power
I'm
of the
in.
story. Like I know,
Yes.
yeah, I know this thing. Oh man, that's another idea. Okay, yeah, Statue of Liberty fan. Thanks for suggesting that. That shows what a true New Yorker I am, is that I don't really think about the Statue of Liberty very much because I just take it for granted that it's
Oh,
there.
there's so much of that city that I didn't do because it was like touristy stuff. So like I actually hadn't even gone into the Empire. I lived there for 5 years and I never went to the Empire State Building. I never like even saw it until this one girl like she was like, we're going on a date, and she was like, no, we're going to the Empire State Building. Like, no, like this is our date now. We're going. I'm like,
And
okay.
you were like a tourist? No
Like,
way,
oh,
never,
all
never.
right, never. I was grumbled the whole time. No, I loved it. It was gorgeous. I'm very easy to entertain like that. But I could talk to you forever. It's such a delight to have you on here. Like, thank you again for joining us. Where can everybody find you on social media?
I'm at Elliot, Elliott Kalan, Kalan, all one word, Elliot Kalan, on Twitter. And that's my only social media thing because otherwise it's too overwhelming. I get too much. I think about too much about all the things I'm missing on all my social media platforms. And or if you want to, or you might get a better idea of me through my podcast, The Flophouse, which is available wherever podcasts are available. That's, in some ways, that seems to be my main way of communicating with the outside world, which is strange. But thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun, and I've been just working with AfterShock and making Maniac, and working with Andrea. It's been such a dream experience, and I'm so glad that that I got the chance and the opportunity through all the strange twists of fate to tell the story with AfterShock. It's been so great, and so thank you so much for having me today to talk about it.
Yeah, and it's been such an honor having Maniac Harry's story being told here at AfterShock. So thank you again for coming to us at AfterShock with it.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody watching, stay tuned. We're going to take a little commercial break, but then we're going to be back for a live sale, and we're going to be selling all the Maniac Harry swag for a fraction of the cost. So we'll see you in a second. Hey folks, I just wanted to remind you that we have an Epicenter every single Tuesday, and this coming Tuesday, we have so many comic books to talk about for this coming new comic book day on July 20th. We're going to have a new #1, The Brother of All Men. We're going to have the next #2 of A Calculated Man, which is going to be a Hulu series. And then we have 3s and 4s and conclusions and trade paperbacks, so much to talk about. So make sure that you join us on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And for now, let's get ready for the live sale. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It is now time for the live sale portion of our happy hour. That was just such a wonderful interview to really get in and learn everything about Elliot Kalan's career to lead him to the storytelling of Maniac of New York. So we have quite a lot of swag for you here today and for a fraction of the cost. So I'm gonna, as usual, gonna go through the list quick. And that way you know exactly what's all available for this happy hour. And then we will have our link ready and live. So you can fill it all up in your cart and we'll talk a little bit more about it. And of course, if you guys are still in the chat, I'm here, come talk to me. So we have, first up, we have the Maniac of New York enamel pins. So this came out for our New York Comic Con last year. We have one of Maniac Harry's mask, and the other is the title. We have only 30 available of each, and we're going to be selling them for $10 each. Next up is Bundle of Maniac New York Volume 2, which includes the #1 from Mike Ruth Happy Hour variant, the #1 Dan Panosian Ambassador variant, and then Volume 2, Issue 1, C2E2 2021 variant. So that's 3 comics, 3 variants of Volume 2, Issue 1, and we only have 10 of these bundles available at $25 each. Next up is the Maniac of New York t-shirts. So we actually have only 2 of them available, one medium, one large, and we're going to be doing them at $20 each, so you're going to have to grab those very quickly. But if you guys are interested in more t-shirts, please comment, because we've been trying to get more ordered, so the more you guys push them, the more likely we're going to get them ready and have them for our online shop as well for at our conventions. Oh, and Nathan Duncan did just ask me, what am I drinking today, Ruth? I'm just drinking a little soda water, since I knew that our guest was not going to be able to be drinking with us. I was like, well, I'm not going to drink alone. But next up for the live sale, we have another bundle of issues 1 through 5 of Volume 1. So these are the entire run of issues 1 through 5, Volume 1, and we have 20 available of this bundle at $20 each. We also have the Maniac of New York Volume 1 trade paperback. We have 50 of these available, but we're doing them at a very special price to kind of get you guys ready for the next book landing on August 3rd. We're selling these for only $10 each, so make sure you grab that. And we have several graded books available for you as well. All of these graded books are $40 each, a great deal. So we have the graded 9.8 Volume 2, Issue 1, C2E2 2021. And we only have 10 available of those. Next up, we have the graded 9.8 Volume 2, Issue 1, Dan Panosian Ambassador variant, which is awesome. Also only 10 available of these at $40. And last but not least, for our live sale today, we have a graded 9.8 Volume 2, Issue 2, David Lopez Horror Fanatics variant. So if you guys missed out on this, and if you guys are collectors, it's a great cover. We only have 5 available of those, but we are selling them for only $40. So we will now open up the online store. So please get up in there and get all those things in your cart before they go, because there are so few and available of each. JD Smith, good to see you. Nice. Yes, I love all this stuff. So actually, I do have all the pins that we have available. So the Maniac of New York enamel pins, the mask, and the title are fantastic. I love the mask because it's just that little subtle thing of like having that somewhere on, because I have my nerd jacket, as I've labeled it, which is, you know, all my favorite pins. So again, we only have 30 each of those enamel pins for $10 each. And we have 2 bundles. First bundle is we have 3 comics that are all variants of Volume 2, Issue 1. One from the unstoppable Mike Ruth, who I just adore having him on the show, for the Happy Hour variant. And then Dan Panosian, also a good friend, for the Ambassador variant. And then the C2E2 2021 variant. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head who the artist was on that, and I almost want to guess. It was Tim Seeley. Thank you. Stefan to the rescue. I was about to say, I think it was Tim Seeley, because we did have him sign a few of those. So, and we only have 10 available of that bundle at only $25 each. I really love all 3 of these covers. They're so much fun and terrifying. And we have the only 2 of the Maniac of New York t-shirts. So we have 1 medium and 1 large. This was kind of a test to see if we liked the specific printer, but I think we like them quite a lot. So you can get those at $20 each. And if you want more t-shirts for Maniac Harry or anything AfterShock related, please comment tweet us, all that stuff. We love that because the more we hear from you, the more we know what to make next. The next bundle is the issues 1 through 5 of Volume 1, and we only have 20 of these available. So that's the entirety of the first run. I believe all first prints, and we're only doing it for $20 each. And then we have the trade paperback of Volume. Guys, put it on your calendar. Make sure you put it on your pull list. But the second volume of the Maniac of New York, Bronx is Burning is going to be in stores on August 3rd. Come to find out on Elliot's youngest son's birthday, which is adorable. Oh, and Nathan says, I want a Read Dangerously shirt. I know that's another thing we need to make more of. So yes, please tweet at us about that and comment away about that. And we also have the 3 different graded books for Maniac of New York. So we have the Volume 2, Issue 1, C2E2, 2021, only 10 available of those at $40. Then we have the 9.8 graded Volume 2, Issue 1, Dan Panosian Ambassador variant, 10 available, $40. And then to switch it up completely, we have the graded 9.8 Volume 2, Issue 2, David Lopez Horror Fanatics variant. We only have 5 available at $40 each. And if you guys missed out on, we actually did all of the issues of the Horror Fanatics variant. So make sure if that's kind of one of the things you like to collect, reach out to your local comic book shop ASAP. And other than that, we are just so happy to have had you all here. It was great having Elliot on. Again, we could have talked to him for another 45 minutes. It's just so great. Oh, and Adam asked, how much are the AfterShock t-shirts? Well, if you stick around for the end of this program, we are actually doing a deal on our webpage. And if you've been on any of our social media, we do have AfterShock shirts available in all the sizes. And if you're headed to San Diego Comic-Con this weekend and you bring either wear the shirt, or if it's still on the way and you have a receipt of buying the shirt, we'll give you 10% off anything you purchase at the AfterShock booth. So very fun stuff. But as always, folks, thank you so much for being part of the AfterShock family and joining us here today. Make sure to like, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, because we're going to have content for you guys every single Thursday and Tuesday at minimum. So we got a lot of great stuff coming your way. So make sure to stay safe out there, wear your masks, whether it's a hairy Maniac mask or not. Keep your distance and only read dangerously. We'll see you all next time.